Where is God? That's what most people are asking. The world is falling apart. Where is God? What is God? What kind of nonsense is this? Isn't that what you think? Many of you atheists do. Let me turn on the on air light because I'm on air with you. I'm Michael Savage, and it's God Talk on Sunday morning. Who am I to talk about God? Am I a holy man? Absolutely, maybe. I don't know. Are you? Let he who is without sin cast the first stone. I'm just a human being traveling through the universe along with you. Now, I could get very political very quickly and say that everything that this demented, criminal, sick, bastardly administration lays upon Donald Trump and the entire white race is what they are doing to this country. But I won't do that because I just did it. I wake up this morning and I see that the Azov battalion in Ukraine is being celebrated by Zelensky with the Nazi flag. I said, how much more clear does it have to get that I have to say the following, which I did on Facebook and Twitter? Biden supports Nazis and the progressives cheer, calling American patriots white supremacists. Go look at it. Ukraine hypes neo-Nazi linked Azov as legendary and returned to frontline service. It's exactly what Putin's been saying. You don't understand the Russian mindset. You think they're all evil. They were our allies in World War II. They were our allies against ISIS when Trump was in power. They destroyed ISIS. Russia, U.S. Air Force, in coordination, destroyed ISIS at the time. Along comes this degenerate criminal administration, and the whole world is falling apart. Not just Ukraine, Russia. Do you know that Biden is responsible for the deaths of about 400,000 Ukrainians and about 40,000 Russians? Now, I published that figure with Colonel McGregor, who knows more than I do and you do. And we were called every name under the sun. Then all of a sudden, the old York Times, the leftist fakers say 400,000 dead from war. 400,000? Do you know what that is? We lost almost 50,000 men in Vietnam, and we've never gotten over it. Ukraine has lost 400,000 men. They'll never get over it. There will never be a Ukraine again. Why are we throwing gasoline upon the fire? Is this God's work? Now, I could pick up the Bible and start thumping the Bible. We all know what that is. We all don't want that. We don't want that. We say, oh, that's something from the past. You may as well get out the strychnine and start shaking the snakes and drink the strychnine. Everything that the media tells you is a complete lie. Everything's upside down. Storm coming. First storm in history because of global warming. I mean, climate change. I mean, bullshit change. Wipe out Los Angeles. Flood the Southwest. And as usual, it dribbles out. Nothing. Biden, the man of the people. They traced $20 million directly to him under aliases. Name another president in American history that used aliases to collect money who didn't go to jail, directly to jail. None. But when you're protected by Jake Tapper, who now is, I'm using his name for a reason. Jake Tapper is the biggest snake on CNN. The rest you could see right through them. Jake likes to pretend that he's a rationalist and calls it like it is. So after licking the feet of this corrupt administration, now he makes believe that he's somewhere in the middle. But he's not alone. He's just a leaf in the wind. A nothing burger in LA. They bought sandbags, they bought water, they bought candles, they bought flashlights. They gave us the hogwash that we were going to be wiped out because of global warming. And they consulted the great PhD epidemiologist, meteorologist, proctologist, Greta Thunberg, who never went to the 9th grade, the expert on climate change. Greta Thunberg. Where they get that psychopath from? Where do they get these sick people from? How do they elevate them to such levels? So I wanted to do God talk today, but I had to get this out of my system first. I said, who am I to talk about God? Am I a holy man? No, I'm a man full of holes. You hear that one before? Because I haven't. You heard it now. Just like you, I'm a man full of holes in my soul. But that's why I do God talk. Because in order to heal myself, I've got to do God's work. And in order to do God's work, I have to read from a book I didn't write called The Rock of Ages. Now, I know many of you don't like to hear it. You don't want to know about it. That's your problem, not mine. I have a little note on the front of this book, which I had with me for so long. I've heard the phrase, but I first heard the phrase from a little-known boxer, Rocky Graziano, at a friend of mine's wedding. There were 4 of us in the room. Rocky's dead. My friend is dead. His wife is dead. Everyone's dead. But I remember sitting in that room. My friend Mel was marrying Rocky's daughter. And it was Rocky, the daughter, Mel, and I, and the rabbi. Rocky, of course, is an Italian Catholic. And before the little, prayer, the rabbi pulled out the Bible, and Rocky said, that's the Rock of Ages. It's interesting to me how many of the toughest men on the planet are believers in God. I watch fights all the time, and many of them pray, especially from Mexico or Central America, those countries, Central America. They all pray to God. We laugh at God. We mock God. That's why we're losing our nation. Oh, there's so many things I want to say all at once, but I'm not going to say them all at once. Let me say them slowly. So the other day, I interviewed Joel Pollack, the senior editor of Breitbart, which is a great website, Breitbart.com. And we talked about the persecution of Donald Trump, the Georgia situation with the Black Panther's daughter, DA, supported by George Soros, who, in my opinion, is the incarnation of the devil himself. George Soros is, in my mind, in every generation, there's an evil person that appears, whether it had been, let's say, Rasputin in that phase of history, Rasputin in Russia. Soros is the Rasputin of America. You have to ask yourself, how could a Jew who escapes the Nazis by turning in other Jews, which is to his own admission on 60 Minutes, be given asylum in America and then turn America into his enemy and try to undermine it every way he can? How? How? Why? Where's the madness of this? What's the end game with him and his weasel son? The weasel son, the spawn of Soros, to spend billions of dollars putting district attorneys in place who are pro-criminal and hate the police, hate America, hate society, hate God, hate family, and hate religion. How is it possible? What is God doing to us and why? So I interviewed Joel Pollack the other day of Breitbart, as I was saying, and the question was about Trump, and we did an incredible interview. People are still raving about it. And yes, I will tell you to go to my podcast, and yes, I will tell you to listen to it, yes, because you're going to find something in there for yourself. I'll tell you, something happened. So Joel Pollack is a graduate of Harvard Law School. He was born in South Africa, grew up in Chicago, Illinois. I believe he lived in Israel for a while. I'm not sure. Jewish Studies, University of Cape Town, South Africa, not Israel. But he has a law degree from Harvard, which he never talks about. So before I interviewed Joel, I called my friend Danny Horowitz, who's a white-collar criminal defense attorney. He has represented some of the most dangerous people on the planet. Daniel goes in and out of the hardest prisons on earth and talks to some of the toughest, meanest people on this planet. That's a whole separate story. I want to interview Dan about that. Dan never calls me and says, Michael, God, who is this Joel? He said, his insights are amazing. So you have those two people, Dan Horowitz, Joel Pollack, on my podcast. And the title is about Trump. I'm reluctant to even say the T word. I don't even want to say it myself. Trump has become such a toxic word that I'm afraid to even say Trump. And we're all trumped out, by the way. And yes, he is being crucified. And yes, there's an element of the Jesus story here with Pontius Pilate or Pilate. All of the characters in the Bible can be seen in the Trump drama. He doesn't help himself at all through his arrogance and his rages. We all know that. We've known that for a long time. Before the last election, I sent memo after memo which went into the round file, into the garbage can, because he was surrounded by Judases. And I said, Mr. Trump, don't talk after October of that year and you'll be president. Stop tweeting and stop talking. He could have beaten Biden by a land mile, not by a squeak. He didn't listen. He has a flaw. We all have flaws. His flaw is unbridled verbal diarrhea. Let's put it to you that way. It can be very charming, but it can be very off-putting to a lot of people. Now, he's facing something that I wouldn't wish upon. Well, I would wish it upon Joe Biden what he's facing, because Joe Biden deserves what they did to him, because Biden looks to me like he represents a classic crime syndicate. How else do you explain $20 million in money traced by Congress itself directly to, do you know any other president in history that used the aliases to receive money? Name one. Never. Never. Everything that they accused Trump of, Biden did, and the Democrats did and do. That's their game. But the American people are more interested in, what is it they're interested in now? Hamburgers, juicy bacon burgers with cheese dripping with extra fat. And dope, lots of dope for the dopes. Dope yourself up and you think your mind will be sharper, huh? Because that's what Katzenberg, Matzenberg, and Ratzenberg show you in their movies. Every movie shows you how good weed is for the brain, put out by the most devilish people the world has ever seen. Katzenberg, Matzenberg, and Ratzenberg. Do you know who's running Joe Biden's re-election campaign? Jeffrey Katzenberg, the slimiest person in the history of Hollywood is Jeffrey Katzenberg, and he's the chief fundraiser, the last I checked, for Joe Biden. Now, why would Hollywood want Joe Biden back in office, even though the man is falling down on himself? There must be something in it for Hollywood. I mustn't forget baseball, a 19th century sport with grown men in striped suits while the world is burning and men are dying. Take me out to the ball game. Or you can go on a cruise and see other lunatics. I never saw anything like it. I mean, I do love the sea, but I love the sea. I love the sea. If I go on a boat, which I haven't in a while, I sold my boat. I'm maybe going to buy a new boat because I love the water. And the San Francisco Bay, I call it an inland sea, San Francisco Bay. It's not a bay as you would know it. It's not like Manhasset Bay. It's a pretty rough inland sea. There are calm days in areas that it's flat, but mostly it's a rough sea, an inland sea, and you got to know what you're doing. When I go on a boat, I go at 6, 8 knots, 9 knots. I don't go faster, no matter what the boat's capable of, because I like to listen to the splash of the sea against the hull, the sound of the water. I tune in. I tune into nature. I don't like to go on a boat with anyone, because there's so many things going on at once. The sound of the water against the hull. Sometimes pelicans will fly right over my boat, literally, and I look at them and I talk to them. I look up and I praise God when I see a flock of pelicans fly right over my eyes. I actually talk to them like they're my pets. I don't understand the majesty of the world, how it can be lost on people and how they need entertainment, when nature itself is the greatest show on earth. The water, the sea, the sky, the scent of the water. That's what I go on the water for. I don't have a boat right now. Well, you can go on a cruise ship with 4,000 other people, and they need entertainment around the clock. They need 25 meals a day. You need an ice show at sea. You need clowns at sea. You need strippers at sea. You need D entertainers at sea, putting on bad, broken shows at sea. Then when you get to the land that you're going to, the promised land, you need to get on a bus and go into the jungle. And you need to go on a zip line in the jungles of Honduras. Then come back and eat more bacon burgers. Then you'll be a real American. 40,000 meals a day. How they do it, I don't know. How can the world sustain it? I don't know. This is what people do. Meanwhile, the world burns. The world is falling apart right in front of our eyes. A relative of mine sent me an email this morning saying, did you see the latest news? And this is a person in my family who doesn't watch the news anymore. She can't take it. I know so many people who don't watch the news. They can't take what Biden and Soros have done to this world. And it's just that they don't stop. No matter what happens, they get worse. Mayorkas, the head of DHS, floods America with third world, fourth world immigrants, illegal aliens. They're not migrants. They're leeches. Almost every one of them come here to leech off the system. Do not call them migrants. Call them leeches. They're not your grandfather or great-grandfather coming here to work. They're coming here to leech off the system. How could this system survive? Our streets are filled with drug-addicted homeless bums, already polluting the cities. Now you bring in 5 million more to do nothing here, but lay on cardboard in the streets. So you say, well, who's doing this and why? It's as though a machine started doing this and they can't stop. Like an insane machine that's broken. Like the ticket that exploded. Like a ticket machine that broke and kept spitting out tickets to the third world trash that's coming in here. Not to work, but to work the system. And don't you dare tell me they're like my grandfather. They're not like your ancestors at all. Not because they look different, but because they act differently. They're not coming here to work. They're coming here to work the system. Why is God doing this to us? If this is God talk, why am I being so political? Because I don't know how to separate the two. Can you separate it anymore? Is this nation in decline? Is God destroying America because we have sinned, as some would say? I don't know. I don't know at all. Really don't know. These are times that trouble men's souls if they still have one. So as I was saying earlier, I interviewed Joel Pollack about Trump and his travails the other day, and I'm getting back to that point. And he said, well, the story that is most apt for Donald Trump is the Bible's book, 2 Samuel. So I said, well, I don't know. What does 2 Samuel have to say about that? I couldn't really find anything in 2 Samuel. I mean, I picked it up. It's like obscure references to burning stuff. I don't believe in sacrifices on the altar and things of that nature. I don't take the Bible literally, because if I did, I'd have to be stoned to death along with everyone I know. You'd have to be stoned to death for your sins. So I don't believe in fire and brimstone, by the way. I read it for another reason. I take it, as they say, with a grain of salt. It was written in another time. Of course, much of it applies. I mean, I do eat shrimp. So if I eat shrimp, therefore I could do anything, right? Now think about that. According to the ultra-religious fanatics, if you break one of the rules, you break all of them. So you have to follow it down to the T. So they follow it to the T. And what they're doing to each other in Israel is destroying Israel. The ultra-Orthodox religious fanatic maniacs are about to destroy Israel in a civil war. They don't want to fight in the military, but they want the country to support them. They have more children than anybody else, and they hate people who are not ultra-religious who support them. So if a woman walks by their holy temple in Israel, they spit at her and throw stones. That's Israel today. Nothing seems to make sense to me anymore. So I'm doing God talk as much for me as for you. God talk. I almost sounded like Elena Kagan. God talk. The Second Amendment. Heller is established law. So I asked you earlier, do you want God talk today? Some of the people said interesting things, including, no, I don't want it. Yeah, I love your insights. Yes, do it. Yes, we're waiting for your insights. And then some say, no, please. Brief crazy around the world with us, Michael, please. Through each continent, maybe break down the chaos at each turf. Well, I gave a little bit of America and a little bit of Israel. Where do you want me to go next? Ukraine, Russia? I did that too. That's 3 already. Anything positive, Doc? No. No. Then a guy says, Joanne says, what does that even mean? Where is God in today's insanity? What role does the God of religion play in this freak show? There's a cynical part of me that agrees with her. Another one says, not from you, Michael. It's too grueling, shallow logic. Thanks, Bree. That makes sense. And yet, I think that without God, we'd be even in worse shape. Without religion, I think we'd be in worse shape. So I saw some pictures the other day. I tweeted a lot over the weekend. I held back. I haven't been doing my Savage raps. Remember I told you I was going to try to do them every day. I got bored of them. And then I don't have to do them. The beauty is I'm not tied to a corporation. I don't do it for income. I do it for, as they say, like an artist, my own satisfaction. I don't believe in that, but I do it for you and I do it for me. I do it for my connection to my audience. But I didn't want to do them this week. I was just kind of down from the whole world. I can't take much more of Biden's insanity. I can't take what he's doing to the country. Biden's vacation at billionaire climate investor Tom Steyer's $18 million home in Lake Tahoe. That's on the way for the senile corpse to go make believe he cares about Maui. For 2 weeks, he did nothing. Remember what happened when Bush blinked for a second during a hurricane? How the vermin in the media went insane? No FEMA, Bush bad. Where is Andy Blooper, that degenerate scumbag? Where was he while Biden was doing Tahoe? Who was he doing? Who was Andy doing? I could get so angry right now, but I'm not going to. The reason we are here is because of people like Andy Cooper, Wolf Blitzer, ABC, CBS, NBC, MSNBC, Fox News, Newsmax, and all of them. They're all corporate owned and they're all the same. Some are a little different, but fundamentally they're all the same. They all report to the same false god. So how am I different? I make no money doing this speech. I'm not even asking you to buy anything. I'm not selling you a hat. I'm not selling you anything. So what am I doing it for? I'll tell you what Samuel said. That's my grandfather's name, by the way. Samuel, the astronaut of the family, the one who fled Belarus. Worked until he had a heart attack, brought his family over after slaving here, died at 49. Yeah, I come from really rich people. Slaved here, brought the family over. Didn't sneak him in on a rubber tube and be put up in a $400 a night hotel room by the most corrupt, degenerate criminal administration imaginable. I'm paying for these slime bags from Venezuela in New York. I'm paying for the scum of the earth to live in a hotel room. They get their laundry done, these third world leeches. I'm paying for the leeches from Venezuela to have their laundry done and meals delivered to their hotel room? How could this happen? What did we do wrong to let this degenerate administration do this to us? And they're not stopped by the vermin on the Republican side because they're in on it. They want the illegal aliens. They want them. They think they're going to work. Where are they working? Show me where they're working. They're not. Where are they working? If they're putting them in a hotel room, where are they working? They're not working. So I looked up 2 Samuel. I've got to find it. I want to get back to the main point before I conclude. So, oh, Mike, don't leave us. Stay with us all day. No, Mike's going to leave shortly. The purpose of 2 Samuel, I read, to show how God led King David's life, specifically, despite David's grave sins against God, despite David's grave sins against God, God led King David's life. He had led his life to establish an eternal dynasty. That's the moral lesson for me and for you. Despite our grave sins against God, and I don't mean eating shrimp or ham and cheese, our grave sins against God, despite our grave sins against God, God is eternal. And he can help us establish our eternity. You say the eternal dynasty of King David. To me, that's the eternity of our soul. The virtue of being virtuous as best we can. The virtue of humility. The destructiveness of pride. The faithfulness of God's promise. So David was a flawed man. He was a warlord. David was a warlord. King David was a warlord. He slew all the other tribal leaders to become the king. When I first heard that, I was shocked. King David, oh, wow. A ruthless drug dealer of his time. Think about that. Think of the most vicious Mexican cartel leader that you've ever read about and what they do to people. That's what David did to the leaders of the other tribes and their families. I'm not laughing. I'm trying to tell you contextually how evil David was. He's no saint. He's a ruthless murderer. And yet God still talked to him. So that means that if you sin mildly, which we all do, God can still be there for you. You can be the worst person on earth, and God can still be there for you. I know, so, oh, come on, now you're getting too preachy. I don't believe in this. What's this God? Well, I don't know. Answer it yourself. That's for you to decide. I'm not here to judge whether God exists for you. No, that's for you to do, not for me. We're living in something like Babylon. This is something like Babylon. And I think that we're close to a destruction. If we're permitting the destruction of a nation like Ukraine and the death of 350 to 400,000 great, beautiful Ukrainian men put into the meat grinder because of the vermin in the military-industrial complex and the psychotics like Victoria Nuland and the deceased John McCain, who started this whole god-awful thing. Then what else can come tomorrow? Anything and everything. God predicts terrible things in Isaiah, and I'm not going to read it to you. I'm not here to be a preacher and scare you and have you pass the hat around. There's a passage in Isaiah about what happens about the land of Israel because they sinned against the God. They shall take them captive, whose captives they were, and they shall rule over their oppression. Zion was founded so the afflicted of his people could take refuge after World War II. But they have turned Zion into just another Mediterranean state. And that, my friends, is that story. There is no Israel anymore, as far as you know it. Moshe Dayan is dead. Golda Meir is dead. All of the greats of Israel are dead. And now it's ruled by a bunch of liberal judges who went to Harvard and other such cesspools of the mind, which teach you how to trick people with the lure, how to use the lure to hoodwink people. That's what they did at Harvard. We had a distant relative who graduated Harvard Law School. And you know what they taught her in her last semester? Children or young students, when you go out into the world, look within your family for your first cases, meaning sue someone in your own family. That's what they taught her. So when you hear the Supreme Court of Israel is angry that Netanyahu wants a balance of power and a sharing of power, basically like we have. We have a Supreme Court that's not supreme. They make rulings, yes, but they don't run the country. Our elected Congress runs the country, not a bunch of lawyers, some of whom went to Harvard. You look at Israel, a lot of them went to Harvard Law School to learn how to screw their own country. So now when Netanyahu comes back to power, they're screaming he's a dictator and a fascist because he wants power shared with the elected president of Israel and an elected Knesset of Israel, not just the lawyers who went to Harvard, who got used to running the country like a fiefdom. See, when you say Israel, I say Sanhedrin. The Supreme Court of Israel is the Sanhedrin, period, end of story. Breakthrough of God's plan to redeem the world. Where is God? Repent means to turn away from sin and turn towards righteousness. We could do that on a dime. We can turn ourselves around no matter how foul or far we have fallen. Each day we awaken anew. Each day you awaken anew. I can't talk to Joe Biden. He's a lost soul. To me, the soul is gone. He's vacant. He's not there. If anyone in that family is running this country, it's the wife, the social worker, Jill. She's running the country. How she got here, I don't know. Jeremiah was a prophet. That was a song, a great hippie song. The priest shall be astonished, and the prophets shall wonder. For my people is foolish. They know me not. They are sottish children. They have no understanding. They are wise to do evil, but to do good they have no knowledge. All right, so you're no good and I'm great. I'm great and you're no good. That's basically what the priest says to you in those fire and brimstone churches as they pass the hat. I am so glad I'm not passing the hat. Here, put nothing in my hat. All I ask is that you check the like mark. Big deal. So I'll get an extra 10,000 likes. Or go to my podcast. What does that mean? You'll get something out of it. I won't. And now I'll conclude with what Jeremiah told us God promised Israel for turning away from God. Watch me change the light on the screen. See, it becomes a different light. Let's all take a deep breath now. Come on. Let's do some breathing. Breathe in. And now we'll read what could be coming to this country. Jeremiah wrote this, and with thee will I shatter the nations, and with thee I will destroy kingdoms, and with thee I will shatter the horse and his rider, and with thee will I shatter the chariot and him that rideth therein, and with thee will I shatter man and woman, and with thee I will shatter the old man and the youth, and with thee will I shatter the young man and the maid, and with thee shall I shatter the shepherd and his flock, and with thee will I shatter the husbandman and his yoke of oxen, and with thee I will shatter the husbandman and his yoke of oxen, and with thee will I shatter governors and deputies, and will render unto Babylon and go to all the inhabitants of Chaldea all their evil that they have done in Zion in your sight, saith the Lord. Man, was Jeremiah pissed off. He would have been a great talk show host, but he wouldn't have gotten any advertisers. And then Cumulus would have fired him because they couldn't control him. They would have said, get him off the air. Leave people like Benny Shapiro on. Or Mark Levin, the lawyer, the government lawyer who pretends he hates the government. Leave them on the air. It was the greatest thing that ever happened to me because I don't want to be on the radio. I cannot stand radio. I don't, if I tell you I've not listened to a talk show once since I left, I would not be lying, as God is my witness. There's nothing to listen to. It's bullshit because they're all listening in their inner ear if they're offending Mary Berner at Cumulus, who runs it. Mary Berner runs it. If I ever, I don't want to go into that. It's past. It's in my rearview mirror. To make the land of Babylon and desolation, a desolation without inhabitant. Great. To make the land of Babylon a desolation without inhabitant. God. You know, I hope it's not going to happen. But let's see Biden sending F-16s to Zelensky and his theater troupe, pretending to be Napoleon. Zelensky's pretending one day to be Napoleon, the next day to be FDR, the next day to be Winston Churchill, next day to be Jesus, the next day to be Moses. But Zelensky is a degenerate, perverted comedian who was used by the Azov battalion, the Nazis who really run Ukraine, as a front man. I'm telling you this right now. I'm giving you the emes. Emes means truth in Hebrew. Zelensky, you know how smart the Nazis are in Ukraine? So is Putin really innocent? No. But let me ask you a question about that, because this is what threatens to destroy the whole world now because of Jake Sullivan, Victoria Nuland, our State Department, which are run by crazy people. A State Department is supposed to be diplomacy. They're supposed to negotiate peace, not create war. Everything is upside down in Caligula's America. Caligula, the corpse, the one who lays on a beach. So the Azov Battalion, which are the hardcore troops of Ukraine, they're very tough troops. They're great warriors. And they ascribe to the Nazi belief system. Their insignias are still basically related to the Nazi insignias. There was a Ukrainian SS division that was amongst the most ruthless of the ruthless in World War II, and they never went away. So they're so smart, they used a fallen Jew like Zelensky as their front man, their stooge, so they can get away with anything they wanted to do. Stupid, they're not. So Zelensky, being an actor, sure, I'll take the job. Hey, man, look at the fun he has. Lauded all over the world. Wow. Every day a new act for Zelensky. And I make a prediction to you right now, which I have said before on my podcast. When and if this thing is over, and pray to God it's over yesterday with a negotiated settlement, and Zelensky is thrown onto the ash heap of history by those who used him, he will be blamed for this war, and there will be a wave of anti-Semitism that the world has not seen in 80 years, all because of Zelensky, who used his Jewishness to get away with what he's doing. He's not really in the sense of a religious Jew. Who am I to judge another man? But you don't see him going to synagogue. He doesn't believe in God and the Bible. He's not a practicing Jew. He's like a Charles Schumer Jew. Zelensky's like a Jake Tapper Jew. Zelensky's like all the Jews around Biden. You know, Jewish by birth, Jewish by culture. They'll eat a bagel and lox on Rosh Hashanah. They'll do the mumbo jumbo on Yom Kippur. That's the kind of Jew. You get the picture? They're not like the guys who actually believe in God and would throw themselves, they let themselves be thrown into a fire rather than give up God. I told you that story before. You want to hear what a God-believing Jew is like? Yeah, I'll give you a story. And it's a true story. So the Bolsheviks take over Russia after the Bolshevik Revolution. And one of the first things they want to do is eliminate religion, because they have to replace it with what Biden's doing, a state religion. See, Bolshevik, state religion, Biden, put two and two together. You didn't hear that one on the news. Duh. So the Bolsheviks want to replace religion with a state religion called government. And the chief rabbi of Russia, very big community, a lot of Jews in Russia at the time, in Moscow, he's approached by the Bolsheviks, the young ones, they're 18 years old, 18-year-old revolutionaries with, fire in their eyes to save the world and make it a better place. They want to get rid of religion. So they go to the chief rabbi of Russia, Moscow rather, and they say to him, look, Rabbi, if you come out on your balcony and tell the core of your followers to follow us and not God, we'll leave you alone. You can keep your preaching. So Rabbi says nicely, I can't do that. He said, God is supreme. They put him in Lubyanka prison. Put him in the prison. It's a true story, by the way. You don't have to believe me. Check it out. Put him in the prison, Lubyanka prison. They go to him the next day, the young Bolsheviks, and they say to him, blah, blah, you go out on the balcony any minute, we'll take you out of the prison. No, I can't do it. I can't defy God. God is supreme. All right, as the story goes, they put him down in the basement of Lubyanka prison, which is basically filled with rats and water. And they keep going to him because they don't want to kill him, because they know it'll cause a great mayhem amongst the Jews of Moscow, which they don't need at that early stage of their revolution. So they give him one last chance. The water's up to here. And they say, Rabbi, we want to help you. Come out, just go to the balcony. Tell the people to follow us, not God, and we'll let you go. So the rabbi looks at the Bolshevik who's talking to him. He's a young kid, about 18, and he recognizes him. He knows he's a Jew. And he says to him, if you believe in one God and many worlds, act accordingly. If you believe in many worlds and one God, act accordingly. I got chills up my spine right now. The story goes, that boy, that Bolshevik, still had the spark of the divinity in him, the Bolshevik leader, and he let that rabbi out of that cellar with water up to his neck. And soon the rabbi came to America and established the Chabad movement. My friends, that's the story of the day. If you believe in one God and many worlds, or many gods in one world, act accordingly. And that's the end of today's God Talk. I'm Michael Savage. If you appreciated this sermon this morning, which I did for myself, more importantly than for you, I thought to myself, I'm such a flawed person. The older I get, the more I realize the mistakes I've made. And I'm not a holy person. I'm a person with holes. And there's nothing I can do about the past. All I can do is try to do today what I should have done yesterday. That's all I can do. So, yeah, that's it. I hope to see you again soon. Please patronize michaelsavage.com for the podcasts. Tell your friends about it. And I continue to try to give you, with God's will and your listenership, the greatest show on earth. Thank you for listening. And I hope this God Talk has been of some value to you today. Remember the message. We are not holy. No matter who we are, we're full of holes. We're full of mistakes. But we can repent by trying to do God's work through God's word. Just a teeny little bit. That's the whole story. The God, one God, many worlds. 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 Which of those many worlds do you want to end up in?